coming to CloudTrail, it's a multi-purpose tool. Primarily, organizations use it as a logging tool to understand what is happening on the environment. So whatever activities that we perform, either we use the AWS console or the AWS CLI or the third-party SDK kit. So all these are considered as a application programming interface calls, API call. So all these API calls, we have a mechanism to track. So anything that we do, like we create a new virtual machine, or we go and modify an existing AWS S3 bucket, or we go and delete something. So all these are certain actions which will trigger an event, and that API event will be captured using this trail, the AWS Cloud Trail. So AWS Cloud Trail is a vast topic. So we have uh, multiple areas to discuss on the AWS Cloud Trail. So starting with uh, we need to have a fundamental understanding of what is CloudTrail, and then what are the different types of trails that are part of the CloudTrail option, and then what are the features, best practices, benefits, what are the different integration that we can bring in with CloudTrail, and what are the type of CloudTrail activities that could be monitored. Okay, so we will get into the details of all these things. So that is the agenda. So the trial generally refers to the path that was taken, right? So if you're talking about the picture here, so the trial is how we went, and then that is the way we have to follow, like when we come back or when we want to return. And when there is a auditing or when we want to do some investigation, people follow that trail and then identify how something has happened, or how we can understand, or how we can get better background on what has happened, right? So CloudTrail is like a surveillance camera for your AWS environment. So it sits in the background unseen, and all the records, all the API activities, all the user triggered activities will be logged in a detailed way, and you will get access to who did what on which resource and what time, and from which particular tool they did it, whether they did it on the console or through the CLI or through third party tools, will be clearly captured. And this CloudTrail is the tool which will capture and store all these API calls. And then you can also have retention based on your organization's requirement. So if you want to store multiple days of event history or the logs, you can also keep a track of that. So at a very high level, like trail is the path where you can go and find out what has happened. So trail, or indirectly you can call it as logs or logging, and cloud trail is the tool through which you can capture the logs of what is happening on your AWS cloud platform. So CloudTrail tracks every action or API call that occurs on the AWS cloud platform, right? And then you can generally, like, CloudTrail is very useful for the operations team to go and find out who has changed what, and then from where they did the changes and on what basis they changed it. So it is mainly for operational troubleshooting and problem solving or problem management, and then even you can use it for operational auditing purposes also. And on the other side, we can also use it for ensuring that we have a proper governance, to meet the governance and the legal and compliance requirement, because a lot of the compliance requirement will say that we need to capture every single activity that is happening on our AWS account. So this will also help us to adhere to those compliance, auditing, and legal practices that a particular organization or a particular body has mentioned, that we have to store all the information, or we need to capture all the information. So CloudTrail delivers events from the same AWS account, or you can also capture it from multiple AWS account. So this is going to capture every single trail, the log. So when you say the trail or the log, we can also just on a high level, what kind of information that gets captured. So it captures who did what, and then from where they did it and what action they perform, whether they deleted something or modified something or updated something or created new resource. So all these stuffs will be captured in a very detailed way. So CloudTrail delivers all these event in within 15 minutes of the activity. So people tend to see stuffs, they'll go and check immediately. Sometimes you might not see it because there might be some delay. This is a shared tool across multiple customers, multiple AWS account. So the event delivery delivers events within 15 minutes of API calls. Okay, so that is the guarantee they provide. So it's not like immediate. So most of the times you will get it, you'll get those visible within few seconds. But there are chances that that CloudTrail, if there are too much of weekend activities that is being performed in your account, and there are a lot of logs getting accumulated, so there is a pipe, the event bridge will take its own time to populate it, but it won't go beyond 15 minutes is the commitment that AWS is providing. So it captures who did what and when, from where all these things are completely captured. So this can also act as a security auditing tool if you want to understand when this particular person logged in, from which IP they logged in, and all those stuffs could be easily captured. So when we track those API calls, so the API calls comprises of a lot of information or a lot of elements, right? So tracks all user activities irrespective of how they are performing it from AWS command line or AWS console or AWS third-party software development kit, or even if you're using the browser or some app, all these things will be captured. So coming to the CloudTrail, as I said, CloudTrail is a kind of surveillance camera for your AWS account. I would just compare this as a surveillance camera. It captures every single thing that we are doing, and all the API calls are getting recorded. Whenever an application or whenever a user makes an API call, or a particular IAM user modifies certain resources, all these will be captured immediately. So this is a service which helps you to meet out with a lot of legal, security, compliance, governance, and auditing requirement. And event is nothing but any specific action or action done by a specific user, IAM user or IAM role or a particular service. So all these things are getting recorded, and the recorded action is what we call as event. So event are of three categories. Okay, so I will on a high level, I'm just giving you some briefing. We are going to get into the details of each of these stuff. So management event is something which we get by default. We don't have to explicitly call any additional stuff. But if you want to store the management event for more than 90 days or beyond the default number of days, then you have to go and configure it. And there are certain things like insight event, and even there are data events and so on. So we will get to understand these three categories and the differences between the insight events, data events, and the management event. So event includes all the actions you perform from the API tools, or if you're written your own custom API, or you're using some third-party REST API, even those actions will be captured. So at a very high level, the CloudTrail is going to capture every single stuff that we are doing. That's the reason I said it's like a surveillance camera for your environment. And once after it captures it, it actually stores the data. And then the storing of data, there is a kind of specific limit. So for the first 90 days, whatever the information that is getting populated, you don't have to really pay anything extra. But if you're going beyond 90 days, and if you want to store um, uh, more than 90 days, or if you want to keep retention for maybe 1 year or 6 months and so on, so you might have to pay additionally. But by default 90 days events will be visible. This 90 days is free of cost, and that too we are talking about the management events only, not the other custom insights or the additional data events. So it will not cover those two categories for the first 90 days, not for the first 90 days. Whatever the management events that we are doing, the 90 days of event will be stored, and it will do a circular logging. Okay, so the 91st day event will go and override the first day event. Okay, so that's how it circular logs the existing content. So you can also download this event history in whatever format that you want. If you want to download it in a comma separated value or a JSON file, so it supports downloading the content in a specific format that you want. And beyond 90 days, if you want to store it, then uh, you can route the logs or the events to the CloudTrail, no, not the CloudTrail, the Cloud Event, CloudWatch event bridge, or you can also store it in S3, or you can also send it to some third-party analysis tools like Splunk or Azure Sentinel or different tool set for further semantics or further analysis. Okay, so trail gets created in the console if you can enable it for multiple account or single account, and there are options to configure the trails to be routed to the CloudWatch logs or the third-party tools, and you have connectors available for the native tool set. But if you want to do it for the Azure Sentinel also, they have given you the straightforward option. Okay, now getting into the tracking, right? So I mentioned the CloudTrail tracks all the event, and when I say all the event, there is a format for how things are getting tracked. Okay, so let me come to that. So you can store, you can act, and then you can review. Okay, so at the end, so why we are capturing and storing the information to further do some troubleshooting or do some review, and then understand what has happened, what we need to react and complete, right? So we have to add those act and review and act. So there are many ways to make things better. So AWS also provides you native tools. For example, the other day on Monday, I was talking about the ETL task, right? So extract, transform, and the load stuff, which could be done. So when we get the logs, it is a lot of events, right? It's like thousands and thousands of event getting into the CloudTrail event history. And when you want to do some troubleshooting or when you want to do some analysis, it is not very straightforward. So AWS also provides you CloudTrail Insight dashboard that will give you a kind of quick view. But then some customers, they might want to store it in a specific format because of SOC compliance or ISO compliance or different data protection GDPR standards. They might have to compile it and then store it in a different way. So for which, like AWS provides you options to extract the logs and even coming from a particular tool like CloudTrail, and then it can also do a transformation and loading into another S3 bucket or another tool wherever the organization has decided to store it. So for which, like AWS provides you AWS Glue, which can go and extract, which can go and read the content from your CloudTrail, and you can also transform the data that you want and then send it across to Athena for visualization and so on. So you can use these kind of tools like Glue and Athena to extract and transform the tool, and then you can load it into a different S3 bucket or a different third-party tool to further visualize it for easier consumption of the data. So this supports it. So CloudTrail is pretty much integratable, or you can integrate it with CloudWatch, or you can integrate with Glue, Athena kind of tools where it does a data ETL job, where it transforms the data that we are getting. So pretty much you have a lot of options where it makes the job easier. But when you go and do all these things, there is some additional initial effort that is needed. And also you might have to learn these additional tool set to visualize it, to read the data in a better way. So when we track all the user activities, there is a specific format that it has got. Okay, so yeah, so any activity that we do, right, from the AWS web console or the command line or IDE toolkits like Visual Studio or Eclipse or different tool sets, even if you are using third party or AWS native software development kit, all these actions or against a particular AWS resource, right? When you say AWS resource, you are making some modifications on EC2 instance or Lambda function or S3 bucket or whatever RDS databases. So all these are AWS resources. Any modifications or any new deployment or any changes that you are making, deletion, all these are considered as a API call. So these API calls are getting tracked and stored in the CloudTrail console for further transformation, inspection, and auditing purpose. Okay, so coming to the event, yeah, event is nothing but a record or a particular message, particular entry of what has happened. I will come to the categories of management and then data and the insights differences. So for now, these are the stuff that are getting captured. So it captures who did it, what is the username, who did this activity, from which IP address he made the change, and then what time he made the change. And then it also captures what kind of event has happened, what is the request, and what was the response. So these are the five different stuffs that gets captured at a very high level. So name of the API. So API name of the API is your console, or he did it from command line, or whether he did it from using third-party tools like PowerShell or whatever, or whether he did it using S3 browser or some software development kit. So all these stuffs will be clearly captured. What kind of API they used for performing this, and then it clearly captures the identity of the user or the IAM role or whatever that has been used of the, I mean, this is the caller or the user who did the activity, IAM user or IAM role or whatever. And then what was the request, whether he requested to deploy a new instance or delete the existing RDS database, or what kind of response it had got from the AWS platform, whether the action was successful or whether he was denied access to perform that activity. So either it is a positive or negative response, all the requests and responses are captured. It also clearly capture what time he tried doing that activity and from what IP address or what source he was trying to perform the activity. So the time and source is also clearly visible. Okay, so yeah, just a second. So at the end, it is all capturing the event ID and then what kind of tasks and so on. So I had something more. Let me just, okay, somewhere I had the information format. Maybe that slide will be much easier to understand. Okay, yeah, this is what, no, 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 this is what. Okay, so this is how the content, the JSON format looks like. So it records all the who made the AWS API call, when the API call was made, the time, and then what was the API call, whether it was a new creation, deletion, or whatever, which resource were contacted, whether he reached out to Lambda function or ECS container or EC2 instance, and then where was the API call made from, like whether it was made from a particular tool or a native option. So all these things will be captured. Who made the API call? When was the API call made? And then what was the API call? Whether it was to create or delete or update or whatever. And then which resource? Whether he tried contacting RDS database or S3 bucket, and then where was the API call made from? Like those, all these information, the event source, the event name, the event time, the source IP address, the user agent, the user identity, it captures things in a very detailed way. So it is easier for us to um, capture stuff. So who made it? So that who is an IAM user, or it can be a third party federated user, or it can be a IAM inbuilt user or role, or even a third party one, including the root user also, whatever he is doing, that will also get captured. Okay, so it is not that root user is exempted from getting captured in this record. So the records of all the activities, either it is IAM, AWS native user, or a federated user from your Active Directory or other third party identity source, or even if it is made by the root user, information will be completely captured. So it also captures some more information, like let's say if the user is using the command line interface. So command line interface does not necessarily need to have a username and password, right? They might also use the access key ID and the secret access key. So it will also capture what access key ID was used for performing this access. If they have used the command line tool or the scripting automation tool, when they've used the programmatic access, the access key ID also will be getting captured. And also, if you look at the log closely, it will also capture the information about the account number also. So which AWS account it has touched, and also it will have the ARN ID. So it is not just the username, it will also cover the complete ARN ID, and also it will have the principal ID, which is a kind of option where how AWS stores the information. Even if you look at here, it also stores the access key ID in the exact format, and it has the account number and all those things. So it captures a detailed way. So it captures the access key ID, and then it also captures the account ID. It also captures the ARN ARN number, and then ARN ID, Amazon resource name, right? And also it also captures the length of the session. Okay, how long the invocation happened, or how long the user was active with this particular activity. So now coming to the type of events that we have. Okay, so these are the type of events which I was explaining, right? Management, data event, and the insights. So let's explore them one by one. Okay, let me quickly show you on the console. That way it makes the understanding easier for you. Okay, so if I go to my login console here, okay, okay, search for CloudTrail. Okay, it tracks every user activity and the API usage. Okay, you can go and create a new trail if you want to have. You can create up to four trail, sorry, not five trail, if you want to segregate some specific stuff. Or if you go to the event history, by default, the 90 days of the management event will be stored here, visible here by default. Okay, you don't have to do any explicit configuration for this. This is by default. Okay, so event history for the last 90 days of the management events are available, and it will be rotated in a circular logging format after the 90th day. Okay, and here if you look at the options, it is showing me that someone has done a console login at this particular time. If you just click on that, this is the format that I'm talking about. Okay, it captures the IAM user or the IAM role, which source IP address they connected, which AWS region they landed into by default, what is the type of activity that he performed, whether he console login or whether he deleted something or created something. So all these will be completely captured, and you can also see what kind of event category this is, whether it is a management event or whether it is a data event or whether it is a insight event. And also it will tell you whether he utilized the transport layer security and whether it was a kind of secure login or it was a kind of normal login. It will also tell you what kind of browser, mobile version, if he utilized the MFA, multi-factor authentication, or whether he logged in from the laptop or the mobile version of the app. So all these details are completely captured. So that is what I'm saying. So it captures all the different aspects: who, when, what, and from which particular source IP address, what was the request, whether it was just a login or whether it was some other activity. So if you go back one step on the event history, you can see there is a variety of event that has happened. So not just the console login, someone has sent a message, someone has deleted the stuff, someone has created a new role. So it will also clearly tell you from where they created the role, whether they use some access key ID, from which IP address, what kind of role it was created, and what was the different permission that they were given. So you can see it is part of your Lambda function demo. So stand function 2 was created, and behind the scene, what was the IAM role that was created. So this is the role name that was created, IAM role name. So you can go and get complete details on all the API call, and also it gives you the event category management or whatever. So CloudTrail is enabled by default on all your AWS account when you create it. By default, the management event starts getting captured, and it is available for the last 90 days, last 3 months. And whenever the third month is kind of getting over it, it starts circular logging the first day, second day, and so on. And it's a circular logging on your events. And you can easily view the recent events in the CloudTrail console by just getting into the event history. You don't have to separately create a trail. It is available by default. The event history will have the default last 90 days. But if you want to have a separate trail getting stored into S3 bucket, or if you want to send it to a CloudWatch log group, or if you want to send it to some third-party Splunk or Azure Sentinel for integration, you can create your own trial, and then you can send it across. Okay, you can create up to 5 trial in a AWS account, but that is a soft limit. You can work with the AWS to create as many more trials you want for different resources, different grouping. So this is going to give you a complete visibility. It is going to complete complete information access in terms of who did what and at what time, and it is easier for troubleshooting. And even if you want to search it, view it, download it, they have AWS has given you a easier option here. You can go to the event history, you can select all the events, and you can also download the events in the specific format you want. You can download it in a CSV format or JSON format. And even if you want to do some filtering, or before downloading, you can also filter by a specific uh, resource name, or a particular action done by a username, or a particular action done by a particular AWS resource. You can also filter it, and then you can download the event. You can also create an Athena table directly. They have given you the option. This is where the data extract, transformation, and load can be done on a fly. Okay, so it is pretty much integrated to Athena and tools like Glue. So it's easy to extract the information and transform it into the Athena tables. Okay, AWS provides you this native option, and AWS has recently added up one more feature called CloudTrail Lake. This is more of a security lake solution. So earlier, a couple of years back, AWS did not have its own native SIEM tool, like security integration and event management tool. So most of the customers were using Azure Sentinel and third-party tools for performing the security assessment. But now AWS has come up with their own native tool set called CloudTrail Lake, which can act as a security data lake solution. So coming back to the type of event history. So if you go to the CloudTrail, if you create a trail, this is where you will get to understand the different categories of events that are there. So if you want to create a trail just for the management event, you can also do this. But then if I want to create okay, so let me not just do a quick create, I will just delete it. So this is a quick create you can just do, but I will just delete it. So if you go to the CloudTrail, and if I want to do event data store, go to the trial. So here you can also go and see that what are the different options that are available. If I click on next, this is where I will see the categories of event. Okay, so where it is, create a new management, choose log event. Okay, I'll just say test for now, test trial 01, and then let me go to the step 2. Here is where you will see the category. Okay, then now I'll just create something new, test trial. Yeah, so these are the three categories that are available, but the fourth one has been added as a preview. It's not yet available for general public to consume, but then it is currently in a preview stage. So these are the four different categories which we want to understand. So the events are getting recorded, but it is grouped into four major categories. Okay, so the major categories are management event, that is what we are trying to capture, I mean discuss now. And there is the data event, insight event, and the network activity event, which are the other categories. Okay, first thing, event, it gets captured by default. It is the plane related activity. So whatever you are doing on the control plane on the AWS platform, from the console or from your AP, I mean SDK or CLI, all the operations carried out on the resources in your Amazon Web Services account are revealed as management event. Okay, so whatever the AWS platform resources, whatever the control plane related activities you are doing, all these are management event. Just for an example, any new EC2 instance creation or deletion or updation or modification that you do, that is a kind of control plane activity. And even if you're going and attaching an IAM role, uh, or else like let's say creating a new subnet in a network. Okay, so these are all control plane level. So at the AWS offering products and services level, we are going and creating a particular service at the AWS platform level. These are all called as control plane actions or control plane activities, that is categorized and stored as management event. So you may see a lot of information for each event, including the details that I was explaining. You can also separate the events into read events and write events, so that you can create separate trials for each and every category. So if you go here, it provides you options to do split of activities. If you want to segregate the trial, if you want to have a separate trail for the modifications and the read activities, because a lot of reads will happen continuously. Okay, and if you want to simplify the troubleshooting, you can split the API activities. If you want to group the logs for write activities and read activities separately, so you can also split them into separate trials if you want. So that is the reason here. And even if you want to exclude specific key management service, even like whenever the keys are getting access for every single access, it will record a event. So the session token or whatever the temporary credentials, right? So there is a lot of logs that will come. So if you don't want to include that, you can also exclude those KMS event, and you can also split the API activity into two different trial. If you want to capture the read trial and the write trial into separate logs or separate log grouping, trail grouping, you can also do it. That is pretty much available. So management events or operations that are performed on resources, AWS resources. Okay, I will just say tasks, operational tasks that are performed on your AWS resources. So as I told you, EC2 creation, even a CloudTrail new trail creation is also considered as a management event or a particular operational activity. By default, as I said, management events are configured and available for 90 days. You don't have to really do it, and you can separate and exclude specific events. Like if you want to split read into separate trail and then write into separate trail, and if you want to exclude some specific AMS. Any question?
Stan?
Yes, yes.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Is this also used in case of some network threats and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that?
So in general, so for network related stuff, we used to have the VPC flow logs or the network flow logs primarily used, which we saw during the network class. Or else there are tools like network reachability analyzer and some more troubleshooting tools that are available within your VPC console. So it all depends what kind of activity that you are going to perform. If you are going to understand and troubleshoot the network latency or network reachability, you can use the reachability analyzer and flow log. But recently, like they have also started creating a separate group of event in your VPC or in your AWS network level. So it can be used. Management event is different, but network activity events are the separate category here.
Okay.
But there are other tools also which might contribute to certain troubleshooting scenarios if you,
Specifically.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
case to case.
Okay.
So any creation, deletion of or modification of AWS resources will result in a management event. That simple it is. Okay, so nothing on the network level. So to simplify this, I will say creation, deletion, modification of any AWS resource will result as a management event. So now coming to the data event, which is the second category. Okay, so data event is the object level API activity. For example, if you have an S3 bucket, let's say, okay, so that also has S3 object kind of thing, right? So object level API tasks or activities. So if someone is uploading a specific bucket, put object, or someone is trying to list the object or get object, so these are all object level activities or a sub level activity. For example, if you have DynamoDB table, table level actions or stuffs that we are making, those are all considered as a object level task, data level task. So it will obtain complete information about what you're doing at the object level. So that's the reason it is called event, data event, not the actual resource event. Resource event is management category. Okay, so anything you do on the AWS resource level, it is management, and within the customer data. Okay, so data event generally AWS doesn't bother to capture it. The reason is it is customer data specific, right? Customer has to agree, and then they have to start capturing those level of events or activities if they want to keep track of the actions that someone is making on the data plane level. So this is control plane, as I said. Okay, I've already captured it here. This is at the control plane level, and this is at the data plane level. So when I say data plane, the data plane, so where the data gets transferred, the data gets uploaded, downloaded, data gets migrated or copied over. So those whatever activities that are happening at the data level, any data level events are captured here. So by default, AWS doesn't capture it for two reasons. One, this is customer decision whether they want to keep a track of the data level operational activities, and the second thing is these are all very high volume stuff, right? There will be a lot of data transaction, there will be a lot of data events happening, and if they are capturing it by default, this is going to increase a lot of consumption space, so they are not logged by default. Okay, so this is logged by default, so you don't have to explicitly call out, and it is available for 90 days, as I told you, without any additional steps, but this has to be explicitly configured and enabled for getting captured. So operational activities is not just limited to S3 bucket. Okay, don't get confused there. So I just gave it as an example to make things easier. Even if you have a Lambda function, and if you want to do some API invoke within your Lambda function, or if you have a DynamoDB table where you are doing some item level API calls, all those are a good example. Okay, so maybe let me put couple of examples so that it is clear. So if you have a S3 bucket and you are trying to upload some files or objects into that, so that is considered as a data event. And if you have a DynamoDB table, and if you're trying to add some item or modify some item within that table, that is also called as a stuff. And if you have a relational database and if you want to do some changes at the data level, that is also a kind of data event. And if you have a Lambda function and if you want to do some invocation of a particular item or a particular function, so those are all, those execution activities are also considered as a data event. It's not just specific to S3 alone. Okay, so I just took S3 as an example that makes things to easier, easily understand. So data events are not logged by default because of the high volume and because of the customer related specific information. So a customer generally doesn't want the events and logs to be captured in the AWS solution. So those are the two reasons they have not enabled by default. And as you can imagine, the volume of the events coming out of the data event level, the data plane level, is enormous. Okay, so you have to enable it very cautiously, and if there is a scenario where you need to definitely get that for debugging or troubleshooting or for compliance requirement, enable it, or else you don't have to really enable the data event because it is going to increase the cost for the customer. So as an architect, we need to take a cautious step to enable these data events getting stored. So the next category is the insight event. So we were talking about anomalies and the trend pattern and the difference in how things happen in your account. So this insight is going to detect for any unusual activity in your account. If there is some service limit that is going to hit, or if there is some increase in IAM related activities, or if there is any specific gap in periodic maintenance, or if some resource has not been touched for a very long duration, someone has not done any minor patching or major patching on a RDS instance or a EC2 instance. So those are all considered as gap actually. And even if someone is provisioning the resource in a inaccurate way, those are all captured as a insight event. So any error, any unusual pattern, unusual behavior, unusual increase in a particular resource consumption will result in an insight. So CloudTrail Insight, it's like a anomaly detection tool kind of, but it's not exactly anomaly detection. So there are specific tools for different stuff. So cost anomaly detection is there, and there are other anomaly detection. But insight event is not just limited to anomaly detection. It also detects the anomaly when there is an unusual pattern or unusual trend that is appearing in your console. And what generally happens is you can write these event into a S3 bucket, and you can create a baseline. And you can also integrate this insight with what do you call the CloudWatch event bridge or CloudWatch log group, and you can send it to external stuff also. So network activity event is one another category that they have recently added up. It's still in preview, so you don't have to really worry about the exam. But if the customer wants to have network activities getting captured for troubleshooting and future requirement, so on top of the existing VPC flow log and the network reachability analyzer, the network activity events are going to be very handful when there is a demand to find out any network level slowness or latency or bandwidth issues. You can come and use the network activity events to capture them. So by default, AWS provides you access to management event. It is enabled by default, and you have access to it for 90 days. But if you want to enable the data plane level activities, or if you want to understand some anomalies or any specific event beyond the control and data plane, if you want to find out the trend pattern, and if you want to monitor, have a very closer look, you can also go and select the insights. Insights viewer is also there. There is a separate tool called insights viewer. It's a kind of visualization dashboard that gives you complete visibility. So CloudTrail is very, very powerful in a way that it captures every single API call that is being made at the control plane level, data plane level, and at the network level. So it is going to be very useful for the DevOps engineer or the cloud operations engineer, or even for the architect. If you're doing some problem root cause analysis or problem management ticket, it gets access to full history of account related activities, any administration event, any data event. And in simple, some people call this as administration event. And in the past it used to be like that, but now they want to make it as a management event. But in the past they also use interchangeably administration event and management event. So any administration event can be considered as a management event. Any data plane level event at the data level, customer data level, that is considered as a data event. Anything that is unusual, or anything that you want to follow the pattern trend, and if you want to have a closer look at how the patterns are being done. So daily, if someone is accessing 5 GB of data, and suddenly if they are trying to download 10 GB of data, that is unusual behavior, unusual pattern, unusual trend. So that will be captured as an insight in your insight. Okay, any questions so far on the CloudTrail? CloudTrail, it captures everything. And just for an example, let's do something and then see if it comes here. And you can also create log trail and try to have different categorization or grouping. So let's say if I'm creating some S3 bucket, or if I'm creating some EC2 instance, let's see how the logs are getting generated. Okay, let me just, for a sample, I'll create stand test bucket 101, create, and then let me also launch a EC2 instance. So the event name might be slightly different. For example, if I'm going to create a EC2 instance, you might look for an event which says create EC2 instance, right? But instead, it will have a event name run instances. Okay, I'll show you that. Okay, just a quick example. Stand test server 101. So let me just launch the instance. This is fine, existing. Okay, fine. I don't want to have key pair. Launch it. Okay, this is just to generate some CloudTrail event and then explain you what kind of request parameters are included and what kind of response elements you are going to get from that particular event. So let's see. It also clearly shows where the API call was made, which IP address, which AWS region, and what kind of IAM user or root user was used. You can also search using this instance ID, or you can also search using a particular event name and so on. So if you are going and terminating the instance, it will show clearly terminate instance. Okay, some event names will be exactly the same of what you are trying to do, but sometimes the create instance or the deploy instance will be shown as a run instance option, and you will also get a very clear error message. You will also get a very clear error code. Using that error code and error message, it is pretty straightforward and easy to go and search in AWS documentation on what is the root cause of that error, and you can easily fix that. Okay, so now you have some couple of resources that has got created, and hopefully you will start seeing those management activities that we have done. If I go to the event history, I should start seeing two different events that has added. See, run instance is what has created a new EC2 instance. Create bucket is what has created a new thing. And on top of that, it has also created a put bucket encryption. By default, encryption is enabled. Okay, so that is the reason it has added an additional event name. And if you go inside that, you will clearly understand what is the bucket, what is the service that we have touched, and what user was used for creating it, whether it was root user, and from which account ID, what is the username that was used to perform this. This is my ID, right? Skillepistan is my account name. And then what is the task that I perform, create bucket, what is the bucket name, and from which IP address I did this activity. So this is my IP address. So if you look at this thing, it is 123 ending with 31, right? So that is what I've seen. I'm seeing here, right? 123 ending with 31. So all these things are pretty much, and also it shows I'm using some Chrome browser, and then it also says what are the different stuffs that I've done. So it is very detailed. Okay, whatever we are doing as a root user or an IAM user or using an IAM role, everything gets captured. So even you see that it is just a easy to instance creation, but behind the scene, it has accessed a particular Amazon machine image, the Amazon Linux image, and then it has created a network interface. It has created a security group. It has been allocated an IP from a particular VPC and subnet. So whatever the resource that has been referenced, or whatever the resource it has touched, all those things will be captured very clearly. So the username, the activity, what is the AMI that was used, how many instance was launched, whether it was a auto scaling or a regular one, what is the security group that was got created, or whether we use the existing security group, what is the instance name that we gave. So everything, right, most of them will get captured. Just give me a second. Okay, sorry. Yeah, we will continue. Yeah, so this gives you a complete information of who made the API calls and what are the different stuff that we have done. And it is very detailed, okay? It is more than expected. You will see a lot of information around what kind of mm, AWS EC2 instance type that we used, whether it was a HVM type of category, or what kind of disk we used, what kind of hypervisor model that we have used. Everything will be listed here. It's a very detailed information. It will also show you the different resources that has been touched, and pretty much uh, very much detailed. Okay, so now coming to some of the features and some of the key benefits of your CloudTrail. So yeah, so these are the very important features. So when it comes to log file retention or storing some log files, customers want to have integrity, right? So they don't want the log files to be tampered or modified or changed. So CloudTrail ensures that log files cannot be modified once after it is captured and stored, and it can be used for capturing the same region or multi-region in the same trail. And you can also configure additional data events and insight. You can also integrate with Azure Sentinel or any third-party tools if you want to have the SIEM logs stored in a separate way. And also it meets a lot of regulatory requirements. Some customer will ask like whether the data, whatever we are capturing and storing, whether it is oblique to GDPR, PCI, and HIPAA, is it is uh, meeting all those standards. So the very first feature is the log file integrity feature, right? The log file integrity means whatever the logs getting captured, it should not be tampered. No one should have access to alter it or delete that. So this is very important or very crucial for any organization. So they want the data to be accurate, very accurate. Accuracy is important, and then accurate, right? So and then it also has to be trustworthy. So the audit logs, whatever we are capturing, it gets created and then it gets stored into an S3 bucket. And what happens when each and every logs are getting stored? AWS creates a digest file for that log file. So a hash algorithm is used on the backend, the SHA algorithm, right? The SHA 256 algorithm will be used, and each log file will have a hash file, so that any changes that we are making, this digest file will clear itself. Someone has tried making some changes, or someone has tried deleting it, and all those things will be captured. So even though if they have deleted this file, the digest file will clearly tell you that whatever changes that has made. So whenever the logs are getting stored in your S3 bucket or in your destination, AWS automatically uses the SHA algorithm to create a digest file along with each and every log file that is getting stored. So it is pretty much the integrity and the accuracy and trustworthiness is pretty much visible in CloudTrail. So log file is very much the integrity is pretty much there. Okay, and you can also integrate with the other tools, especially the CloudWatch log groups and S3 bucket. If you want to store more number of days beyond the default number of days, if you want it for auditing or some legal and compliance requirement, or if you want it for debugging or troubleshooting, you can also store it for 1 year or 5 years or 10 years into the S3 bucket or the CloudWatch log group. And the each and every additional storage capacity or the log group capacity, you have to pay for it. And beyond the CloudWatch, if you want to have some machine learning, or if you want to have very detailed insight, you can also enable this CloudWatch Insight, which can monitor the unusual behaviors pattern and help you to get some quick troubleshooting. So AWS provides you native CloudWatch Insights viewer. It is part of your CloudTrail, right? This is a kind of graphical activity which will show you the red indication where exactly there is a difference in pattern that is identified. Suddenly, like if you are consistently having 5 users or 10 users, suddenly if there are 20 users or 25 users, it will show that it is a difference in trend. The baseline is different and something has happened in comparison with the last 10 days or 20 days or whatever the duration it is using for the trend or pattern analysis. So it is available by default. You can also configure multiple region into one S3 bucket. If you want to correlate things happening in multiple regions, you can also do that. So one S3 bucket can be created, and you can configure all the CloudTrail logs and events to be stored in the common S3 bucket, so that if you want to troubleshoot or correlate certain things at the organization level, this will help you to do things easily. So of course, compliance standards, the most of the important ones are listed here: the Service Organization for Control, SOC, the ISO, the PCI, the FedRAMP, the HIPAA. So all these standards are by default, and they are accredited to these standards. Okay, so you don't have to really worry about it. So coming to the pricing, right? Pricing wise, there is a free tier. The first 90 days are considered as a free tier. But if you want to store beyond that, you have to go and pay for the amount of capacity that you are using on the S3 bucket for storing the logs. So the more you store, the pricing is little cheaper. But the very first initial set of capacity, it is going to be extra chargeable. Okay, so this is the high level pricing model, okay, for the management event. If you're storing it in the Amazon S3, the first copy is free. Okay, as I told you, the very first copy is free, and if you are storing more number of events and additional copy of event, if you are going and storing it in S3 bucket or CloudWatch log group, so for 1 lakh management event, $2 is the price. And similarly for data event, for 1 lakh data events, it is like 10 cents, 35 cents for your insight. So the pricing is different for each and every category: management category, data category, and insight category. And whenever you are storing the data in the S3 bucket, the first 5 terabytes is pretty cheaper. Sorry, a little costly, but the more you store, the pricing gets slimmer, right? So, any questions so far? So, coming to the advantages, this is a very powerful tool for operations troubleshooting and security analysis. It provides you a lot of simplification on how the events are categorized. On a very high level, you can categorize it as management, data, network, and insight. And within the management, if you want to split it into write event, read event, you can also split it. And if you want to group it from multiple AWS account, multiple regions, and into one bucket, that also can be done, so that you can correlate and troubleshoot much faster. So consolidation is possible, splitting is possible. You can exclude and include specific things. So pretty much it covers more than 200 plus AWS services. This CloudTrail almost, so AWS provides you kind of 220 or 225 services. Almost 90 to 95% of the services are covered using the CloudTrail. So there is a lot of advantages of using this tool. It's a must-use tool for the DevOps team and the um, operations team, because it's not just limited to even the cloud security team, right? So cloud security team can also understand the events pattern, and they can use this analytics tool for simplified monitoring. So data exfiltration, right? Data exfiltration is something, any object level API calls, S3 object or DynamoDB item or RDS database item, right? So it observes all the data exfiltration and it is getting recorded. So that is also being taken care of. Operational troubleshooting is the main thing. Okay, so more than anything, operations team heavily rely upon this tool. Coming to advantages and benefits are the same, but this is from a slightly different perspective. So when cloud security team, or if you want external vendor or external legal compliant company to come and look at your environment to ensure that the logs are properly captured, stored, and it is available for auditing, they will do some analysis. And if they find the benchmarks, whatever we are storing is in a proper way, so you will quickly get that audit confirmation for your customer environment. So for auditing, for security and legal compliance, CloudTrail acts as a better source. And by default, there is a lot of compliance that is already there. When I'm talking about the third party compliance, so AWS has already demonstrated the comprehensive logging mechanism, and then they have clearly showed how the framework works and the user activities work. So it is already compliant with the payment card industry data security standard, HIPAA, GDPR, ISO, SOC, and a lot of regulatory requirements has already certified that CloudTrail is a very good tool for storing all the events and information for further troubleshooting and analysis, right? It also gives you a lot of cost benefit. In a way, it identifies the underutilized, the unused or idle resources. So CloudTrail also clearly gives you the indication on or pinpoint which instances, which volume, which services can be terminated or downsized. That will result in obvious cost benefit, cost saving, right? So cost management is also been taken care of from the CloudWatch CloudTrail logs, because insight event is primarily contributing to this. So any unnecessary resources or underutilized or misconfigured resources could be quickly optimized using this CloudTrail feature. Okay, so coming to the best practices, you have to enable the CloudTrail in on all, I mean, all the regions, and you can also enable it at the organization level, and you can also have a better standard for the log retention. So don't store it for longer duration unless the customer demands you to do that, because it is going to cost you, and you have to regularly visit this particular tool. Okay, so either you need it, or some people only touches that tool when there is operational issue. So stay touched on this tool, so that way whenever there is a demand or requirement, you can quickly browse through the options and then help customer troubleshoot. You will be pulled into some priority calls, and then you should not go and search for options at that time, right? So make yourself familiar with the tool, try to regularly review and find out what is happening, and you can also configure automation if in case certain things has to be automated as per the organization requirement. So any questions from anyone on